So when a person dies, when the spirit leaves the person's body, we no longer call the physical body as something living, or we no longer mention the physical body with the name which was given to it by his or her parents. Instead, we term it as the dead corpse or the dead body. Why? Because the living essence is not there, it is dead, and there is no living impulse within the physical sheath. In the same way, one of our soul faculty, which is the intellect, when our intelligence or when our intellect is not guided or not surrendered to the higher worlds, to God or to the spiritual world, we can call it as a dead corpse or a dead intellect, a dead tool. By using this dead tool, we create dead thoughts which does not have a living essence or living impulse in it. So at some point, when this dead tool is used to create a certain world, it will lead to the creation of a dead, havoc, dry, chaos, immoral world. A world which is like a dead tomb where there is no living essence. Now, when we consider our older generation to our current and the younger generation, our older generation lived in a kind of a hive mind, in a dreamy state, and also the intelligence and the knowledge which prevailed at that time was not as great as we see now. So they lived in the traditions passed by the generation to generations. So their use of intellect was not great. But when we come to this generation, it is completely different. And going forward, we are going to live in a completely different world where the knowledge will increase exponentially and the knowledge and intellect will increase to a greater extent. But at what expense does it increase? It increases at the expense that the entire spiritual or the spirit nature is cut off, or it is called as something foolishness or superstitious. So at the expense of the spiritual nature, by cutting off or devoid of the spiritual nature, the intelligence will increase at a rapid stage, as we see now. So one of the primary causes is that when a young person moves through his life stages, he does not see an example in whatever institute or family he is placed. All he sees is people fulfilling their titles and positions, whether it is educator or librarian or whatever it is. They just see a person fulfilling their title. The real human nature, which is the spiritual, is missing. When an young person looks for that, even though he or she does not put in words, as how I mentioned, within his inner core, he looks for people who can show him an example to be in complete control of their physical as well as the spiritual nature, or how to cooperate their spiritual nature into this physical world. They look for it, and that is what they're earning for, even though they don't put it in such a sentence. But since that such kind of examples are not seen, at certain point eventually that light is dimmed, or that earning to know it is replaced by something external. As I told, that this generation intelligence is greater than the previous, the intelligence which they have, since they do not find an example of people who have merged their intelligence with the spiritual world and able to govern it into the physical world, this intelligence, which is of a great gift to this generation and to the coming generation, they use it in order to build the external world devoid of the spirit. And the memory of the spirit is completely erased from their mind. Even when we see in the religious traditions, the older generation have passed traditions after traditions. Even if some mention that they do not want to follow just traditions, but still they think that the rules and the rigid ways that they follow is what the spirit is. And when a child is born in such a tradition with high intelligence, and all they see is just a hive mind, and there is no proper reasoning or logic, they move to the other extent because they do not see the traditions imbued with higher spiritual intelligence. So hence it becomes a set of superstitious. And then they move to the other side, which is the intellectual, dry intellectual side without God. And they see an opportunity to use their intelligence there. And since we do not have examples there in the other side where intelligence is merged with the spiritual or with the spiritual world, all the example they have is the world built through the dry, dead thoughts or the dead intellectual tool. So going forward, if this continues, we will see great inventions and accomplishments happening, but devoid of the spirit, completely devoid of the spiritual nature. So it will create a world which is dry, dark, without any moral values, without any spiritual nature in it. A dead world with dead thoughts. At the beginning, we will see this as something great, but as the time passes by, since it is not aligned or surrendered with God, it will take another turn. It will take a turn where the moral values of people will decline. Certain values like compassion, empathy, love, and awe and wonder towards the spiritual world will lead to a total dryness and a loss of moral and a loss of childlike nature, a kind of innocence. All these kind of virtues will be lost, and a dead world will be presented to us. A dead world which is so satisfying to our sensual nature. So this world will be completely operating under our lower ego. So the intellectual tool is a very powerful tool. It's a very powerful weapon. When our intellect is not aligned to God, it is aligned to our lower desires, to a lower sensual desires, to a lower ego, which will create havoc, destructions, and a kind of a world which will only deal with the external, only deal with the hard material life. When we raise our intellect from our lower ego to our higher mind, to God, to the spiritual hierarchies, it will be imbued with the spiritual nature. It will be, our mind will be renewed and transformed like the mind of the gods. So our intellect will, um, once it is raised towards God, it will be united with the unchanging spiritual laws that govern the spiritual world. And once it is united with the spiritual laws, we will be able to work with the spiritual world smoothly. We will get inspirations, intuitions, and imaginations from the spiritual world through our intellect, which has been spiritualized, and we will take it into our system and into every job that we are doing. So this is how we build the kingdom of God here on earth. It is through this tool. Our intellect, which is spiritualized, is the tool which brings the will of God, or establish the will of God here on earth. So the intellect, the spiritualized intellect, is like our scepter, which helps us to um, keep our foot strong on the physical world. In other words, in whatever pursuit we are here on this earth, whatever profession we are here on this earth, we will build the the physical world around us through the spiritual impulse that we get. Okay, so even when this happens, even our most mundane work will become filled with life. There will be living impulse that flows from our head to toes and towards our surroundings. So this is another kind of world that we are tasked to build. So in previous religious traditions, and even now, usually the most holiest and heroic people are termed when they say that they just want to live this wretched world and they want to go out of it. But those are just archaic old thought, and if that thought continues for a long time, it will lead to a very pride and a luciferic impulse. Instead, the task for us, the most holiest and humble task, is that we need to tend our physical world in whatever position we are in. And how do we do it? By bringing the spirit into whatever we do. Okay, so whatever we do must be of a living impulse, filled with life, filled with inspiration, intuition, and imaginations. At the beginning, it is going to be hard, but as we learn this process of submitting our intellect toward the higher world, the easier it gets for us to permeate the spirit with whatever physical work we are doing. Okay. Um, so yes, so this is one of the secret. The secret is our intelligence. When it is spiritualized, it forms our higher mind. When our intelligence is not spiritualized, is living in our lower regions, it forms the lower mind. Okay, so there is two kind of mind that we develop, and which is reflected in our outside world. So when we raise our intelligence towards the heavens, towards God, and when it is permeated by the inseparable spiritual laws, it undergoes a transformation. And this transformed intellect, we call it as the cosmic intelligence. Okay, or we call it as the spiritual intelligence. In the Eastern esoteric traditions, we call it as the Buddhi consciousness, Buddhi. and in the Christian esoteric we call it as the morning star. So there are two kinds of morning stars. One morning star is luciferic, which was the intelligence given before the humanity can reach a particular point of time. Since it was given before maturity, it led to the formation of the lower mind. But now the second kind of morning star is the intelligence, um, which is developed through Christ, through God, to correct alignment to God. And in Theosophical Society, we call this as the Mercurian impulse. Okay, and the darker one we call as the Mars impulse. So, um, so like going forward, we are moving into a epoch known as the soul consciousness. Okay, we are currently leaving this epoch and moving into a epoch known as the soul consciousness. So in this soul consciousness we epoch, there are two kinds of streams that will be formed. The first stream is a group of people who have cleaned their astral body and who have permeated, who have helped to bring the world, to lift the world. In the other words, they have worked with the spirit, or they have brought the spirit into the physical world and uh, created the physical world in the will or in the image of the heaven, in whatever field they are. So in previously the spirit or was only permeated to a group of religious people, but now the time has come in the soul consciousness that it wants to go through and permeate into all areas of life, all areas of the world, so called the secular jobs, so termed by the worldly people. So it wants to enter into all kinds of industries, entertainment or science. So it wants to move into all these fields, because previously these fields were created by the lower mind. Okay, so now in the soul consciousness they will raise a group of people who are so um, imbued with the intelligence that they have uh, joined their intelligence with the divine mind, that they will be able to permeate these areas and lift them with the holy inspirations, holy intuitions, and holy imaginations. And this group of people will be called as the Order of Melchizedek, or the Mercurian people. And the other group of people will be those who will work with the rigid dogmatic rules, who will just have titles and positions, who will use their intellect only for creating the external world, and there will be no permeation of the spirit into whatever they do, which will eventually lead to dry, dark world without the understanding of the spirit, um, which will lead to death at a point of time. So these are the two kinds of generations or streams that are going to rise up in the next epoch. So let me read to you from the book The Holy Signs, written by Sri Yukteswar Giri. So it is about the spiritualization of our intelligence and how it is like a two-edged sword, and um, the different verbiage that is used here for it. The atom, under the influence of Chit, universal knowledge, forms the chitta or the calm state of mind. And when that calm state of mind is spiritualized, it is called buddhi, intelligence. In opposite of it is manas, mind, in which lives the jiva, the self with ahamkara, ego, the idea of separate existence. So here in these words he mentions that When the calm state of our mind, or otherwise when our astral body is clear, and when that is spiritualized, it is called as the buddhi intelligence or the higher intelligence. And the opposite of that is the manas. It is termed as commonly as manas, but it actually means the lower manas, the opposite of the buddhi intelligence. So let me read another few lines regarding the buddhi intelligence. Being thus magnetized, which is the intelligence, it has two poles. One which attracts it towards the real substance, sat, which is when the intelligence is um, given towards God, and the other repels it from the same. The former is called sattva or buddhi, the intelligence, which determines what is truth, and the latter being a particle of repulsion. The almighty force, spiritualized as foresaid, produces the ideal world of enjoyment and is called manas or the lower mind. So, yeah, so these are some of the insights regarding the cosmic intelligence. And moving forward, I will be posting more on the cosmic intelligence and the way it works within our soul, and the different myths and stories that was mentioned regarding this precious gem, which is our intelligence. Okay, thank you.